Hello, and welcome to the Johnson Controls Blue Water webinar for September 2022. I am Craig Hanna, and I am grateful to serve as the engineering manager of the Johnson Controls Water Infrastructure Technology team. Our team of subject matter experts is dedicated to designing, installing, and commissioning projects that reduce water loss, that increase water utility staff efficiency, and that decrease operational and maintenance expenditures. In short, our team exists solely to provide your water utility with the critical tools and training it needs to be a well-run organization. Please allow me to introduce to you two of my other teammates, Audrey Noel and Jonathan Gunn. Audrey is our intrepid team leader, and she lives in Southern California. I can readily admit that Audrey is truly a master of databases, a whiz at Microsoft Word, and she is also an outstanding project manager. If I had either a mobile AMR or an AMI system project to install, I would want her to lead it. Audrey, would you please tell the audience more about yourself and some of your experiences in the water industry?
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig. I'm Audrey Noel, Director of the Water Infrastructure Technology team here at Johnson Controls. I have 7 years of industry experience, a Juris Doctorate with an emphasis in environmental law, and decades of experience in operations. I have the privilege of leading the team from the sunny shores of Huntington Beach, but I couldn't do it without our very knowledgeable and talented market manager, Jonathan Gunn, who offices just 2,700 miles northeast of me in Canandaigua, New York. Jonathan, tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. I think we're having lunch later, right? It's a short drive, so not too bad. Again, good morning. My name's Jonathan Gunn. I have the privilege of serving as a market manager with our water infrastructure technology team, and I have 12 years in the industry, and like Craig, I serve in a number of different capacities within the American Waterworks Association, including as the current chair of the Customer Metering Practices Committee, and I also co-author a number of manuals and publications. So great to be here with you this morning. Thank you for joining us, and per our usual, we have had we've been doing this webinar series for a number of months now, and we still every month have a number of new folks joining the call. So I do want to take a minute per our usual and just go over what you're seeing on your screen here for those who may be new to the On24 platform. First off, right in the center there, you're seeing my video feed, and you're seeing the video feed of the other presenters as we speak this morning. That's known as the media player. So that's where you'll see the content there. To the right of that is the slide deck. This is where you'll see the content as we go through the webinar. This is also where you will see a video that we have prepared for you later in the webinar. Beneath that is the Q&A module. So at any point during the webinar, if you have a question or something just doesn't quite line up, you want to learn a little bit more about it, please submit a question through there. We do have a couple different pauses here in the webinar this morning to answer those questions. And please don't feel like you have to wait until those moments unveil themselves. Anytime during the webinar, please submit those and we'll get them in the queue. To the left of that is webinar-related content. So these are documents and other files that you can download at your leisure, and they serve as supplemental information to topics that not only are we discussing today, but also from past webinars. To the left of the media player is the book a meeting function. So if you feel that an email or a Q&A just won't quite answer the question that you have, please use that function, set up a meeting with us. We'd love to hear about the challenges that you're facing and, more importantly, how we can help you solve those. Last but not least, along the bottom of the screen, see the icon bar. You do see some familiar icons there, such as media player and slide decks. I'll mention that all of the windows that you see in front of you, you can move them around, you can resize them, you can really make this experience your own. And if in doing so you happen to accidentally delete one of them, that's where you would go to get that back. There are also some others for windows that are not currently up, such as sending us an email, earning CEU credits, and taking a survey. So if those things are of interest to you, please use those functions. We do ask that everyone take a survey at the end of the webinar, because we're always looking to improve the series and hit on the topics that are of interest to all of you. So with all that being said, Craig, I'm going to hand it to you for the agenda.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, and I'll be glad to do that. It wouldn't be a Johnson Controls event if we didn't start with safety, and today I will be telling the tale of the bloody knife, which is about maintaining situational awareness. And next, there is so much misinformation out there on smart meter projects that we have dedicated our part of this webinar to giving your water utility the information it needs to correctly respond to many of these challenges. Today, we will finish addressing some of the most common complaints about smart meter projects that we started in our webinar last month. We will also discuss data privacy, network security, and we will offer some advice for creating an opt-out program for that 2% or so of your account holders that are adamantly opposed to this technology. And we are so glad to have Darcy Burke and Judy Sulfaker back with us to present a case study on how to properly manage negative social media content. Darcy and Judy will be covering the recent water main blowout that interrupted the water supply for the entire city of Odessa, Texas, for 5 very long days this summer. And I know that everyone who works for a water utility will find the topics that we cover in this webinar very important, and we're so glad that you could join us today. And so now, the bloody knife story. Years ago, we were about to test a statistically valid random sample of 2-inch and smaller water meters in order to determine the baseline accuracy for a utility so that we could then calculate the benefits from improving water meter accuracy. Early that morning, I received a phone call from our project manager, and he said, "Craig, I hate to bother you, but we've got a problem." I said, "Oh, what's wrong?" He said, "Well, we just opened up the very first meter box, and there's a knife in it, and the knife is bloody. What do we do?" I asked him, "Did you touch it?" And he said, "No." And I sighed in relief and said, "Good. Don't touch it. Now, look around. Is anyone watching you, or do you feel threatened in any way?" And he said no. He felt safe, and I said, "Good. Pack up your tools, get in the truck, leave the neighborhood, then call the sheriff. If someone is watching you, or if you feel threatened in any way, leave your tools behind, get in the truck, and leave the neighborhood. We can always buy more tools, but we can't buy more of you." So my advice is to always wear your cut-resistant gloves and use a tool to probe the area around the meter setting before you place your hands inside the meter box. This is especially important in areas in which drug needles may be present because cut-resistant gloves will not protect you against needle punctures. And if you find contraband or weapons, do not touch them, but contact law enforcement. Be aware of your surroundings so that you don't become a victim. And if you missed our special webinar from August, we strongly encourage you to watch that episode on YouTube by searching for the JCI Blue Water webinar number 9. And you can also access that link for this webinar in the related content module on your console. We cover some key terms that you absolutely must know to answer questions about exposure to radio frequency radiation, and much of what we cover in today's webinar is based upon those fundamental terms. As a bonus, you can learn some useful techniques for de-escalating conflicts with angry customers, and you can learn the principles of dealing with negative social media content from Darcy Burke and Judy Zolfaker of Watermark Associates. All of our previous webinars and some other digital events that you may not have yet seen can be found on the JCI YouTube channel. We showed this photograph to you in our webinar last month, but we chose to show it to you again because it is such a good example of an active protest from someone who is very much opposed to smart water meters. It also features the 3 topics that our team will be covering today. You can see that the account holder has double padlocked the meter lid closed to prevent us from installing an AMI system endpoint at their residence. And the resident has used a paint pen on the meter lid to express their thoughts on smart meters. In case you're wondering, the black plastic disc that you see on the meter lid is for a touch read coupler. And Audrey, would you tell us about one of your favorite photographs?
Yeah, Craig, this is one of my favorite photos from a project in Colorado. We couldn't resist the urge to show it to you again in this month's webinar. This home was located along the main street in this city, so you know it was seen by hundreds, if not thousands, of citizens. The resident is proclaiming rather loudly that smart meters cause cancer, and the city is lying to us about the health risks of smart meter projects. Craig, is this type of smart meter phobia common?
Well, unfortunately, I have to say it is. And just to illustrate that point, we grabbed the following images from the internet because they clearly illustrate what many people think about smart meters. Here, a woman is claiming that the utility meters at her residence are making her sick. If you recall from our webinar last month, AMI system endpoints transmit at less than 2% of the maximum permissible exposure limits for the general population as established by the Federal Communication Commission. And here in this image, a mother says that she has opted out of having a smart meter because, quote, my poor daughter has had enough radiation for all of us, unquote. And we do sympathize with this woman's daughter for whatever health issues she has suffered. But we also know that her health issues were not caused by smart meters. And while we frequently hear about smart meters and public health, we wonder why some people are so concerned about exposure to energy from these very low-powered radio transmitters when compared to other common devices. For example, standing a little more than a yard away from a microwave oven that is in use can expose you to over 6,000 times more energy per square centimeter than that produced by a water meter endpoint. If you're drinking a cup of coffee in a cyber cafe, you will be exposed to between 6,000 and 12,000 times more energy per square centimeter than that produced by a water meter endpoint. If you're carrying on a conversation with your cell phone, you will be exposed to between 18,000 and 6 million times more energy per square centimeter than that produced by a water meter endpoint. And lastly, this is a very strange assortment of symbols in these two posters featuring Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. If you will, notice the insignia for the infamous Schutzstaff on the Hitler poster, and comparing any group of Hitler's Schutzstaff to the staff of Pacific Gas and Electric requires quite a leap. Both posters include the Eye of Providence image, which I assume is to imply that the utility staff is spying on you. And while the graphic artist chose to show a register reading on the electric meters of 666 kilowatt hours for a very specific reason, it goes without saying that these electric meters are only 111 kilowatt hours of electric usage away from displaying 777 kilowatt hours. The Stalin poster also includes the symbol for ionizing radiation, but smart meter transmissions use only safe, non-ionizing radiation. And lastly, both Hitler and Stalin have the exact same hands with sharpened claws for fingernails. And I have to say, these posters are truly over the top. And now that we've seen just a small sample of the propaganda and misinformation that is out there about smart meters, let's resume our discussion about how to answer some of the more common questions and comments that you may have about smart meters. And Jonathan and Audrey, would you tell us some more about this?
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. Thank you very much. So one complaint commonly found on the internet is that smart water meters frequently overcharge customers. So when answering this question, we have to think about some causes of high bills. And Audrey, as a project manager, a very experienced project manager, you have a lot of experience with solving billing system issues. Would you mind sharing with us some reasons why people may think that smart meters will lead to overcharging or high utility bills?
Well, first of all, it's critical to determine the accuracy of the existing water meter. For example, we've tested many hundreds of positive displacement type water meters that have been in service for more than a decade and subjected to both hard water that causes scale deposits to form and that also have sand and other debris present. Under these conditions, it's common for a positive displacement meter to be less than 60% accurate at both low and intermediate flow rates, the very flow range that a residential water meter will experience for about 85% of its life. If you replace that very inaccurate meter with a new static water meter that's accurate at flow rates as low as 0.05 gallons per minute, it's very reasonable to expect that the water and sewer bill will increase significantly now that the customer is actually paying for the water they're using. Moreover, a water meter only reports usage, and it's the utility billing system that calculates the bills. If someone makes an error while programming the utility billing system, the bill will indeed be incorrect. Some common billing system errors include inputting the wrong meter size, the wrong meter multiplier, the wrong rate code, or even the wrong unit of measure. Those errors can happen during the meter installation phase if the installer is not vigilant and if there are inadequate quality control measures in place. We routinely find that the wrong meter size has been entered into billing, and we often discover meter multiplier errors. We found conversion errors in units of measure, such as when a utility converted from billing in cubic feet to gallons, but let some of the meters that read in cubic feet remain in service. We even once discovered a city that was underbilling every customer because the billing clerk did not understand the water and sewer rate structure that was in effect.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. Yeah, I know with our projects, guaranteed at least one multiplier error that we see, right?
Yeah.
So, Garrett, that's one of the things we can guarantee. So, thank you, Audrey. Another complaint commonly found on the internet is that smart water meters operating in this frequency range, 902 to 928 megahertz, have also been known to interfere with the operation of other devices or rendering them useless. These include baby monitors, cordless phones, garage door openers, and more. This particular complaint really became invalid in the early 2000s. Audrey, would you mind sharing with us why?
Sure thing, Jonathan. As many of you know, the 902 to 928 megahertz is the unlicensed ISM band, and there are many mobile AMR systems and fixed network AMI systems that transmit on that band. Interference with other devices that transmit on the ISM band is possible, but interference with household devices was only an issue for devices made in the 1990s through the early 2000s. Audio-only baby monitors today transmit on the 1.9 gigahertz frequency that's also known as DECT 6.0. DECT stands for Digital Enhanced Cordless Telecommunications. Baby monitors that transmit both audio and video use the 2.4 gigahertz frequency. Cordless phones made before about 1998 did transmit on the 902 to 928 megahertz band, but the cordless phone industry started using the 2.4 gigahertz frequency in 1998. Because the 2.4 gigahertz band was becoming saturated, the FCC opened the 5.8 gigahertz band to the cordless phone industry in 2003. Contemporary cordless phones use the 1.9 gigahertz band. Thus, only someone using a cordless phone that was made before 1998 risks interference from an AMR or AMI system endpoint. And lastly, garage door openers transmit on frequencies between 300 and 390 megahertz. What other concerns are we seeing, Jonathan?
Well, thank you, Audrey. The next one is actually a continuation of the previous complaint. We just had to break it up into two parts for the sake of readability. So, as you can see, it's really one part comment and one part question about interference in the 902 to 928 megahertz ISM band. So let's talk about interference with amateur radio stations, and then, Audrey, maybe we can discuss the possibility that interference may lead to overbilling.
Okay, so first off, regarding the comment about AMR and AMI system endpoints that transmit on the 902 to 928 megahertz band causing interference with amateur radio stations, the U.S. government states in writing that the band 902 to 928 megahertz is allocated on a secondary basis to the amateur service. Furthermore, stations in the amateur service must tolerate any interference from the operations of industrial, scientific, and medical ISM devices. Thus, any amateur radio station operator already knows that they have no basis for a complaint about interference from other devices should they choose to transmit and receive on the 902 to 928 megahertz band. Secondly, the author also questions if interference with AMI system endpoints that transmit on the 902 to 928 megahertz band may affect meter accuracy, may cause the meters to be unreliable, or may contribute to overbilling. We covered the issue of overbilling earlier in the webinar, but the author may be unaware that AMR and AMI system endpoints in the 902 to 928 megahertz band have multiple channels and use frequency hopping spread spectrum technology. In frequency hopping spread spectrum radio communications, the transmitter hops between available narrowband frequencies within a specified broad channel in a pseudo-random sequence known to both sender and receiver. A short burst of data is transmitted on the current narrowband channel, and then the transmitter and receiver tune to the next frequency in the sequence for the next burst of data. In most systems, the transmitter will hop to a new frequency more than twice per second. Because no channel is used for long and the odds of any other transmitter being on the same channel at the same time are low, frequency hopping spread spectrum is often used as a method to allow multiple transmitter and receiver pairs to operate in the same place, on the same broad channel, and at the same time.
Well, thank you, Audrey. So now let's discuss some of the more common health complaints associated with smart meters. If you look at this cartoon from an artist who is clearly opposed to smart meters, exposure to smart meters can cause 9 very different health problems that range from leg cramps to learning problems, vision problems, heart problems, balance problems, and fatigue. Because of the amazingly broad range of health problems shown in this illustration, one may reasonably conclude that almost any health issue could somehow be connected to the exposure of electromagnetic wave energy. A written complaint that's very similar to this previous cartoon is that smart meters, quote, can cause serious disruption and even disability for residents. Some people can physically hear a shrill ringing or clicking noises after smart meters have been installed, and in quite a number of cases, there have been reports that has caused severe ear pain. Audrey, some people claim to be able to hear radio frequency transmissions from AMR or AMI system endpoints. How do you respond to those claims?
Well, Jonathan, while we can't deny the claim that some people may hear a shrill ringing or clicking noise, when determining if AMI systems are the cause, we would encourage everyone to simply look at what frequencies a human being is capable of hearing. A normal adult can hear frequencies ranging from a low of 20 hertz to an upper limit of about 17 kilohertz. Babies and young children may be capable of hearing frequencies up to 20 kilohertz. AMR and AMI system transmission frequencies, however, lie in that 450 to 470 megahertz, 902 to 928 megahertz, 900 to 950 megahertz, and 4G LTE-M cellular bandwidths. So what you see here is a plot of frequency in hertz. We had to use a logarithmic scale in order to even make this data fit onto one slide. Human beings are physically incapable of hearing frequencies above the red line that's drawn for a reference at 20 kilohertz. This logarithmic graph illustrates that the frequencies used by AMI systems transmit at over 22,500 times higher than what the human ear can hear. Crazy, huh?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a difference, almost like a short drive between California and New York. So,
Right.
Great. Well, thank you. So let's switch for just a moment from talking about human beings to pets for this complaint. Here, the author claims that, quote, some people can no longer live in an area after smart meters have been installed. In addition, some animals, including household pets, become ill after smart meters have been installed. Audrey, what effect do radio frequency transmissions have on our pets?
Well, Jonathan, this question was analyzed in 2021 in the Scientific and Medical Research Journal, Animals, which is an international peer-reviewed open access journal devoted entirely to animals, including the zoology and veterinary sciences. Both the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums and the European College of Animal and Behavioral Medicine are affiliated with the journal Animals. The authors of the study concluded that the radiation exposure was found to be well below international limit values, which means that adverse health effects are unlikely to occur. The authors also conclude that the risk of high exposure of pets is mainly caused by those indoor RF emitting devices, such as WLAN devices. AMI and AMR system endpoints, however, do not transmit on wireless local area network or WLAN frequencies, which are typically in that 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands used by those cordless phones or audio-video baby monitors we talked about earlier today, Jonathan.
Great, thank you, Audrey. So now it's time for us to cover one of the most controversial complaints about smart meters, which is the illness known as electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS. The clinical definition of EHS is a condition defined by the attribution of nonspecific symptoms to electromagnetic fields of man-made origin. The author of this complaint claims that exposure to radiation emitted by smart utility meters has been associated with development of serious health effects, according to a growing number of independent physicians and scientists, including disturbance to heart, development of cancers, inflammation, vision problems, electric sensitivity, etc. Another woman wrote that, quote, electromagnetic hypersensitivity occurs when the amount of EMF radiation exceeds the body's ability to deal with it. Everyone has an imaginary but very real lifetime radiation cup. The body can only tolerate that amount of electromagnetic radiation, and once that cup is full, any exposure can be physically felt and is usually causing end result illnesses such as fibromyalgia, cancer, MS, chronic fatigue, and more. Artie, would you mind sharing with us a little bit more about what the scientific and medical community have to say about EHS?
Well, we would never dispute that someone claims to be adversely affected by exposure to electromagnetic waves because it's very real to them. That being said, the World Health Organization has concluded that A, although the purported symptoms are real, there is no specific evidence of a causal link with EMF exposure, and that B, lowering internationally accepted EMF limits is unlikely to reduce the prevalence of symptoms. Moreover, the World Health Organization also states that a number of studies have investigated the effects of radio frequency fields on brain electrical activity, cognitive function, sleep, heart rate, and blood pressure in volunteers. To date, research does not suggest any significant consistent evidence of adverse health effects from exposure to radio frequency fields at levels below those that cause tissue heating. Further, research has not been able to provide support for a causal relationship between exposure to electromagnetic fields and self-reported symptoms, or electromagnetic hypersensitivity. You might ask, what's happening then, right? Why the complaints? Well, in 2009, the Swedish Radiation Protection Authority conducted a most interesting study. They gathered two groups of people together, one group who claimed to suffer from EHS and another group who claimed to suffer no ill effects from exposure to electromagnetic radiation. Both groups were put into a room together. Sometimes the groups were told that they were being exposed to electromagnetic radiation when they were actually being exposed. And sometimes the groups were told that they were being exposed to electromagnetic radiation when they were not being exposed. And at other times, the groups were exposed to electromagnetic radiation, but they were not told about the exposure. The results of this and other similar studies that have been conducted in recent years are rather interesting. The symptoms were no more prevalent during actual exposure to electromagnetic radiation than during the fake exposure with any of the experimental groups. This and other studies have concluded that there may be a nocebo effect, which is an adverse effect caused by the expectation that something is harmful. In short, the more a person with EHS believes that they have been exposed to electromagnetic radiation, the sicker they become, regardless of their actual exposure to electromagnetic radiation. The mind is amazing, isn't it, Jonathan?
It sure is. And, on one hand, you understand it to a degree because, one of the other complaints about smart meters of which we are aware is the fear of the unknown. Critics argue that there is simply insufficient data available today about the effects of long-term exposure to radio waves from smart meters. Opponents of smart meters cite several historic examples of items that were once considered safe for human consumption or exposure, such as mercury, cocaine, radium, asbestos, cigarettes, and lead, to name a few. However, when you look at the history of radio frequencies, the FCC has been allowing 450 to 470 megahertz transmissions since the 1960s, which means that there's over half a century of history with this bandwidth. Unlicensed spread spectrum communications in the 902 to 928 megahertz band have been permissible in the United States since 1985, which was over 35 years ago. It's important to remember that AMI system endpoints transmit at 2 watts of power or less for an average of less than 1 minute per day. And that's something, if you want a little more detail into how those are calculated, Craig mentioned last month's webinar. We would encourage you to go back and watch that because we went a little deeper into that. But as such, it's really reasonable to conclude that a relationship between AMR and AMI system radio frequency transmissions and public health most likely would have been discovered by now.
You don't need to feel like you're all alone in navigating your community's concerns regarding AMI systems and smart meter safety. If you select Johnson Controls to develop your AMR or AMI system project, we'll be right there with you every step of the way. If you'd like to have a custom design public relations campaign, we'll work with Darcy and Judy from Watermark Associates and your staff to create the perfect messaging for your community. Another valuable resource for you is the FCC, FDA, and OSHA websites. These websites have many pages with information that you can download about public health and exposure to electromagnetic radiation.
And Audrey, I live in Texas, and the Public Utility Commission for Texas offers information that you can download from their website about smart meter safety. They can also provide a customer facts handout that you can access from the related content module on your console here. And I will say many other states have similar resources available for your use, and we encourage you to check with the Public Utility Commission in your state.
And lastly, your chosen EMR or AMI system provider should have numerous resources readily available for you to provide to your citizens that explain how the technology works, how the network complies with FCC exposure limits, and that the network poses no health or safety risks. Here you see some excerpts from the Census FlexNet, Master Meter Allegro, and Neptune R900 Gateway AMI system literature.
Well, thank you both. A lot of great information there. So, we've covered the most common complaints about smart meters, and now we want to discuss data privacy. Many people are concerned that smart meters will reveal the activities of people inside a home by measuring their electricity, gas, or water usage frequently over time. Audrey, is that a true statement regarding water utilities? Can a water department monitor my activities through the AMI system?
Well, first we must distinguish between electric AMI systems and water AMI systems. Because they have an infinite source of power, electric AMI systems can read in 5-minute or even more frequent intervals. We've been told by an AMI system provider that it is possible for a team of engineers to analyze the load profile data and determine what electrical devices are most likely in use. But again, that effort would require a team of experts. Because water endpoints rely on battery power and are expected to provide 20 years of service, a normal interval reading is taken between once and 4 times per hour. That's a very low resolution of data from which it's very difficult to draw any conclusions. We're only aware of 2 cases in which law enforcement has contacted a water utility to determine if a murder suspect may have returned home after the crime to take a shower and wash away the evidence. So, in short, don't expect Water Meter CSI to be the next crime drama for you to stream, Jonathan.
Well, it's a shame because that was actually something I was going to get started, but I guess I'm going to have to put that one on the table. So, thank you, Audrey. The final complaint that we're going to cover involves data security. So in this example, the author writes, quote, inadequate cybersecurity measures surrounding the digital transmission of smart meter data will expose it to misuse by authorized and unauthorized users of the data. Audrey, what can you tell us about data security and AMI system networks?
Well, Jonathan, AMI system networks are quite secure. First of all, no personal data whatsoever is either stored at the endpoint or transmitted over the network. Second, all of the data is encrypted and then sent over a virtual private network, or VPN. AMI system networks also use multi-level firewalls and have antivirus software installed on the server. Only licensed operators can transmit and receive in that 450 to 470 megahertz, 900 to 950 megahertz proprietary license frequencies, and 4G LTE-M cellular frequencies. Mobile AMR and fixed network AMI system providers that transmit on that 902 to 928 megahertz frequencies employ that frequency hopping spread spectrum communications. Because every network is designed differently, we encourage you to consult with your chosen AMI provider for a detailed explanation of the measures taken to ensure that your network is secure.
Thank you, Audrey. So we've given you the information that you need to correct much of the misinformation about smart meters over the last 2 webinars. But we recognize that regardless of our efforts, there will be some account holders in every utility, some citizens in each community, who will refuse to listen to these facts. We therefore encourage you to create an opt-out program for those individuals. We recommend that you first calculate the cost of performing a manual meter read for each step in the meter reading and billing process, and then sum those individual costs into a fee that will be applied to those account holders who choose to opt out of the program every billing cycle. This can be a time-consuming process, we know, but it makes certain that your utility is not losing money because of those who opt out of the program. And it also makes the fee defensible to the account holder, defensible to the media, who may be investigating a complaint from someone who opts out of the program and then becomes upset at the additional charge. And it makes you defensible to possibly the Public Utility Commission. So before we take your questions on smart meters, data privacy, and data security, let's pause to ask, what else can we do for you? We've had a number of webinars. We've covered a number of different topics over the last few months here. If you are needing to replace those old and inaccurate water meters, if your mobile AMR system has reached the end of its useful life, or if the time is right to a fixed network AMI system, we can help. And we can also provide you with the tools and technology needed to reduce both the cost and volume of non-revenue water, and with a turnkey price as well. Johnson Controls can assist you with financing your water and wastewater infrastructure project, and our grant team with a 91% success rate is standing by, ready to assist you. Please either use the book a meeting module on your console, the Q&A module on your console, or send us an email to let us know what challenges you're facing and how we can help you overcome those. So in a moment, we're going to bring Darcy and Judy here to present their case study on managing negative social media content. But we would like to take a minute and just pause for your questions. So if you haven't already, please use the Q&A module on your console to ask us for more information on an item that we presented or to clarify something that we said. Craig, how are we looking? We seen anything?
Nothing now, Jonathan.
Nothing now? Okay. Well, if you do have questions, so if you do have questions, please go ahead, continue to submit those, and we'll have another moment at the end of the webinar to pause. So with that, last month we had Darcy and Judy join us on the webinar to discuss how utilities can correctly address negative social media content, and we're thrilled to have them back to discuss a recent case study on that very important topic. So Darcy and Judy, welcome back. It's great to have you back in the webinar series.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you very much for having us, and good morning to everyone. The topic that we're going to have today is also going to be as it relates to the best practices that we discussed at our last meeting. So this is a case study to kind of show you a really real-life example of how things can go bad and some of the things that can be communicated correctly even during an emergency. So what we're going to talk about today is the Odessa, Texas water main break that happened in June of 2022. So first things first is things we're going to cover today is a little history about Odessa, the incident itself, the responses that the team at Odessa, the city of Odessa, put forward into the community, the confusion they created. We'll even talk about some of the things that they did right, and then the lessons learned, and a little extra bonus, a little bit more that just came up recently. So first of all, let's look at a little history of Odessa, Texas. This deferred maintenance that they had chosen caused a couple of different water issues, water main breaks. This incident in June was not the first one. So they had a break in December of 2019, which created a boil water notice, and then again in May of 2022. And part of this is caused by the fact that they only had a $6 million repair and replacement fund, and they have over 600 miles of pipe that they are responsible for keeping safe and repaired. So before let me back up really quick. Before I start this video, anybody that is on the Chrome will need to look at the bottom left of their screen and click on the speaker icon so that you can hear this video. So I'll give you a second to do that, and then we'll go ahead and start.
The water main break today in Odessa has forced a citywide boil water notice. Some people in the West Texas city of 122,000 have reported not having water at all. The school district in Odessa has canceled summer school classes, and area hospitals have canceled all of their surgeries and procedures for today. Several restaurants have closed down. The city of Odessa says it could take a couple of days to repair their water main.
All right, so let's overview that incident again. So this happened in June, specifically on June 13th. This is a water break of a 60-year-old water main. 165,000 people without water service. And as you heard there, restaurants, the hospital, nobody had water. To add to that, you have temperatures of over 100 degrees and high humidity. With that, I will, and also let me mention that this happened in the evening. So, nothing ever happens during the day when everybody's there and ready to take care of it. It happened in the evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darcy to talk about how Odessa did the actual communication on this issue.
Thank you, Judy. So I'm going to start, and most of this is all focused on Facebook because that is the majority of their followers. They may have Instagram and YouTube and others, but we didn't focus on that. We just looked at their Facebook page. And the first time they post is at about 10:30 on June 13th, and they say update. But when I went through and searched everything, there was no original alert. This was the first notice that they let people know that there was a water main break and to turn off their sprinklers and stop using any non-essential water. So they don't actually tell you that there is no water service. And then the very next morning, people are like, well, is there a boil water notice? Because obviously, as Judy pointed out, this is not their first rodeo. They have had boil water notices before. And staff says, no. Immediately after, staff says yes. Staff does not post separately that there's a boil water notice. Staff replies to someone that has already posted. So if you're not following that conversation, you're not alerted on this particular social media platform that there's a boil water notice. They also don't refer you back to their main website. Like, this is what's happening right now. For up-to-date information, check our website. So within a very short amount of time, there was a lot of confusion being created because people are told, yes, there is, and then no, there isn't. Later that morning, they came back and they had a press release. And the director of public utilities said the pipe is repaired, and it's going to take about 24 hours to obviously disinfect, get all of the sign-offs on and turn that back under the system. And if you notice the density of the press release that I pulled that post on, I know might be difficult to read, but it's very technical. It doesn't really talk about this is what you can do. They do mention where you can pick up water if you need it, but they don't go into any of the things that they would like people to do, and they don't acknowledge that people are out of water. So when you look at what they did next, which is actually brilliant, and one of the things we highly recommend is take images. These are photos that they posted of the repair. And people were very appreciative. Oh, it seems like they're making progress. Thank you so much. There wasn't a lot of negative comments on here because it's very transparent. We're showing you exactly what we're doing. We're showing you where our crews are working, and people can say, oh, they're actually fixing the problem. But on June 15th, they're saying, okay, you should have water. And people are like, well, I don't have water, and I still need water, and what am I going to do, right? There's no there's no reference back to a website. There's no telling them that they, when the press conference is going to be, there's just a lack of information. The other thing that you'll notice, and I've only picked gems from this string of Facebook posts, is that multiple people are posting. Sometimes as the city of Odessa, some as their name representing the city of Odessa, and some within minutes of each other saying exact opposite things. The negative comments, some of them, it's not appropriate to post in this webinar because we don't use that type of language. And they were still up. Those that were swearing were not removed. So one of the things I really wanted to point out was that the state representative that actually represents in the state legislature in Texas for Odessa did an exceptional job. If you notice his post, it's very clear. It tags City of Odessa, so those that are following the City of Odessa got that. He tells you that the water's flowing. He says that it's safe for you to shower and flush. He still tells you how to boil water. He, continue to conserve as much as possible. This gentleman did a yeoman's job, absolutely yeoman's job. So it was super important that I wanted to show you how to do it right. So this state legislature took the time to go through. He went to the press conference. He tells them that this is the information I got from Wednesday's briefing. And this is all the things he was able to post. And this is the next day. So now we're into day 3, 13th, 14th, and 15th. And there are still parts of the town that have no water. And for most of us, you might realize in a town like Odessa, when you weren't able to actually access drinking water from the city, where would you go to buy it? It would be a large box store, Walmart. I don't know if you have Costco in Texas, but a big box store. They were all closed because they had no water, so they had no sanitation. So it was a very trying time for this entire community. And I just wanted to point out that the state representative, he really needs to be commended because he and his staff did it right. This is my favorite post out of all the posts they did. So now we're to June 16th, so it's really day 4. And the city proudly posts that McKinney Spray Park, or Splash Park, will open today at 2 p.m. By the way, there's still no water. The water system is still down in the majority parts of the city, but the Splash Park is open. And I wanted to call out what this woman posted. So is the water safe to digest? Because you know the kids are going to stand in the spray park and open their mouths. And the backlash. So whoever was managing the social media from the city probably, we're assuming, I'm praying, preloaded this message, that they knew that they were going to open it on the 16th at 2 o'clock. So they just preloaded the message. And so it went out. The explanation for this little incident was this particular splash pad or spray park operates on a well independent from the city system. However, people don't know that. So they have no water, but the splash and spray park, they're open. Now there's more challenges. The city of Odessa, from what I have gathered, has not invested in advanced technology like a smart meter or any type of form that they would know that there was a flow interruption or things were flowing again. And certainly their SCADA system seems to be exceptionally challenged because they're asking people to print and fill out a form to let them know they still don't have water. And my favorite part, so here's the city of Odessa, Texas, the no report water form. And right underneath it, that link doesn't work. One of their customers had to go find the right link and post it. So let's look at what this cost them. The total incident was over $600,000. And that's 10% of their overall repair and replacement fund, right? And I've marked out some of the information I was able to gather. But that doesn't include lost revenue. That doesn't include loss of public trust, which is obviously at this point minimal at best. It doesn't include the economic impact to those restaurants, to businesses, to outside people that come to Odessa for work, or any type of visitors. Interestingly enough, this was happening right around AWWACE that was in San Antonio. So it was interesting to see the water community kind of respond to see what they were doing. And here's the little part that we think has just put us over the top here. But wait, there's more. In August 22nd to the 26th, I believe, they also had another water main break. And in the water main break, it's a boil water notice yet again, and people have just lost their minds. The amount of comments, and they're not nice comments, like, I just moved here, is this what I can expect? I've lived here all my life, every time we turn around it's a boil water notice or no notice. And here is even the piece de resistance. In this press release, it says, see the attached map for the impacted areas. There's no map. There's no map on the website. There was never a map posted. It really, for us, kind of blew our mind. So I know that we had some social media protocols that we had at the last webinar, Judy, and I think Craig, if people access that webinar, I think they can access those, if I'm correct.
Yes, Darcy. Yes, that is true. And the links to download the flowcharts are available in the related content module as well.
Oh, perfect. So thank you. So I wanted to take just a few minutes and kind of go over some of the lessons we gleaned from the gems that I captured. It's very important as a water utility to identify who's responding. So for me, I would say, this is Darcy Burke. I'm the Public Information Officer for ABC Water Utility. As my note, I'm representing the city. Have a very clear schedule of who gets to respond when, so you don't have two people giving two different levels of information and causing even more confusion. Review your preloaded posts. So if you have a water outage, please do not promote that you are the city opening a water park. People don't understand how a system works. We all know that. Water is a very complex issue. They may not understand that that splash or spray park was operated completely separate off a well. Follow social media protocols, which is what I was referring and asking Craig to make sure that they had. And why we say that is there's actually a formula of who to follow and what to post, who responds, and when there are bad things being said, how to respond appropriately. It's very difficult when you have no plan to follow. This is really not any negativity on the staff of the city of Odessa, Texas. I see this as a training and education opportunity for the city, that if you are dealing with old infrastructure and that water main breaks are a regular mode of operation, not that I would advocate that as a water professional, but if that's what you're dealing with, and that's what you're dealing with right now, you need to make sure that you are ready with ready messages, ready images. Infographics are a great way to explain to people what they need to do during a boil water notice. That was another thing. I didn't notice a lot of resources being shared. And this is a little bit of crisis communication, right? If you don't have water, it's your crisis. So you need to make the messages very simple. I use that example of the legislator in Texas. He did a great job of keeping it very simple, very clean, very to the point. Where you saw what the city put out, it was so dense. Nobody is going to read that, especially if they're upset. Make it credible. Reference to where you got the information. That's what that legislator did. He put where he got the information. Show that you care. How inconvenient is not having water all the time? You know, we're so sorry you're experiencing it again. And not just dealing with the problem. I never saw any messaging about how they're going to handle this moving forward, right? And to show that you're competent, and to make it, whatever you're posting, to make it share worthy. So if you say you're going to report something soon, tell them at what time. And if you don't have information, come back at that time and say, I'm sorry I don't have an update yet, but we will have one in the next hour or 30 minutes or whatever time frame makes it appropriate. So I don't know if we have any Q&A or...
Yes, Darcy, we had a question, and it's not necessarily about the social media part that case study, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you and Judy to respond to it as well. And the question is, do you recommend conducting AMI system public informational meetings as a part of the public relations campaign, or are they just too much trouble and controversial and you should instead stick with a media rollout only? And I'm going to say from our perspective, we have found it to be a best practice to have public information meetings for AMI system projects early in the project and then throughout the project. We believe that getting the information out there helps overcome resistance greatly. And Darcy and Judy, I'd just like to get your perspective on that as well.
So Judy, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I would just say, I'm sure Darcy will have a whole lot more to say about this, but knowledge is power. And Craig, to your point, getting the information out early, communicating and alleviating some of the fears, or at least addressing them early on, is critical to the success of your rollout.
I'm going to talk a little bit about trust and credibility to that, Judy. When you're seeing me face to face, when I'm a human telling you about this investment we're making and how this helps you manage your water system, you now are a water resource steward. You have the information available to monitor your water use and empower yourself to manage your own water budget. There's no replacement for that. A media rollout, certain people learn different ways. So yes, you need to have a social presence. Yes, you have to have digital. Yes, you have to have traditional. But the more face-to-face engagement opportunities you can create, not just public information meetings. I would want to see you at a community fair. I'd want to see you if the PTA has an opportunity. Judy and I are both very big advocates of engaging with service organizations, whether it be Rotary or Lions, and getting in front of it. Especially the service organizations. Judy, you want to talk about the influencers that we find there?
Yeah, I would say when you're looking at your Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, et cetera, when you can get the information, correct information out to this population in the community, they're the influencers with the rest. So when someone comes up and says, oh, this is a horrible, smart meters are horrible, they're going to do all these horrible things, they can set them straight. And it's not you. You now have them advocating for you in the community. And I think that's probably the most powerful thing you can have, is having others tell the community about how good this program is for the community and alleviating the fears that might creep up from others that are talking negatively about it.
I also think a good tool to think about is how you manage the information, the contact information of your customers, so that you have emails, you have cell phone numbers for text options, emailing. The more information you can provide, the better. And not just when you need something, but that you're giving them updates. To Craig's point about as the project's progressing, right, to get some testimonials from these people that did get the smart meter maybe in phase 1 and the benefits they're having. They're not necessarily, once you're seen as government or utility, you tend to have distrust. So you have to go the extra mile to rebuild that trust and credibility, and it's so important. So I think we have a rounding result that absolutely worth every bit of effort.
Okay. And we have a second question. I'm going to direct this question primarily to Audrey because of her experience as a project manager. But Darcy and Judy, I'm going to ask you, if you will, to please comment as well because of your experience and your roles in your respective utilities there. Okay, and the question is, what steps should a meter installer take should a resident or homeowner meet them at the meter box to prevent them from installing a smart water meter?
So from my experience, Craig, I would always advise any of our installation teams to never get in a disagreement or altercation with any homeowner whatsoever. I typically would, just indicate that it was I'm talking in a scenario, I think, where it's a pit meter, because in an inside meter, the guy is not even letting them in the house. But I've had instances where there's an installer installing at a water meter pit, and someone comes out and defiantly, protests. The installation team will, apologize, even put the old meter pack up and leave and refer that to the utility to address. And in some more unfortunate incidents, that often the installation team sometimes needs a police escort to go install a meter of any type, whether it be gas, water, or electric. Those are few and far between. And when you get to a utility and you start a project, I'll tell you right now, the utility department already knows who that people are. So ask them for a heads up, like who are your more difficult customers with the tinfoil hats. So that's my 2 cents.
The only thing I would add, Audrey, is have a communications toolkit in your meter readers, your operators, pickups, that you can provide the customer who to call with a name, not a title, not I care about my water at whatever utility.com. Make it specific, make it personal, because they're upset. So you don't want to put that person like, we'll just call the office. That's not appropriate. They should have prepared materials in their pickups that they can provide the customer where to direct them. And I agree with you. Leave it as appropriate. Make sure your safety is always first. And if you could provide some, I like to call them just toolkits, communication toolkits in the pickups or vehicles, always a good idea.
Darcy, I thought you were going to tell your Hell's Angels story. I mean, sometimes the customers don't just have tin hats; they might have guns.
Yes, we tried to shut water service off, and a chapter of the Hell's Angels met our operator at the curb, and he left. And you're right, Craig. He came back with sheriff.
Wow. All right. Well, I think that's about all the questions we have. And so I would just like to thank you, Darcy and Judy, for all of your hard work in putting together such a great case study. And I know that I personally learned from it, and I hope everybody else did as well. And you are always welcome to join us on a Blue Water webinar. And if you missed our special webinar from July on funding and financing water and wastewater infrastructure projects, you can find that episode on YouTube by searching for JCI Blue Water webinar. You can also access the link for this webinar in the related content module on your console. All of our previous webinars and some other digital events that you may not have yet seen can be found on the JCI YouTube channel. And if you are attending the AWWA Op Show virtual event next month, I will be delivering a case study about a truly fascinating real water loss and water conservation project at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. You simply will not believe some of the things that we found at that site. I'll leave you with a teaser. We found plastic electric conduit glued together for water pipe. Yes, we did. I developed the real water loss portion of the project, and my colleague Adam Kane developed the water conservation project. And we will be presenting from 10 to 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time on Thursday, October 20th. And we will show you how we successfully applied many of the real water loss measures that we have presented to you in some of our earlier webinars. And we surely hope that you can join us in our presentation at Op Show. And because of Op Show, we had to move the next Blue Water webinar to later in the month to avoid a conflict. In our October webinar, we'll be talking about line-of-sight communications and troubleshooting your AMR/AMI system networks. Our special guests next month will be George Demosthenes and Ian McLeod from Voda.ai. George and Ian will join us to talk about their innovative asset management software that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to accurately predict pipe failures and helps you to better plan your capital improvements project's budget. And we want to congratulate the team at Voda.ai for being named the vendor to watch at the Smart Water Summit at San Antonio last month. I can promise you that we will have a most interesting and informative webinar that you won't want to miss. And again, we'd sure like to thank both Darcy and Judy from Watermark Associates for their case study on managing negative social media content. Please invite your friends and colleagues to attend the Blue Water webinars, and we invite you to submit topics that you would like for us to cover on future webinars, because we want to know what is important to you and your utility. Let us know how we can help you achieve your goals. And you can reach us by sending an email to bluewater@jci.com or through the QR code on your console. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.